Hello and welcome to the PMC podcast, where PMC stands for Project Management Conversations. We'll be talking about ChatGPT today and specifically how can you and I, as project managers, as folks that work in this amazing field of project management, make use of this powerful tool known as ChatGPT. So we have Sean Whitaker with us. He is an international project management consultant himself, based in this beautiful country down under known as New Zealand. One thing that really caught my eye on Sean's profile was how he was named one of the 123 top global influencers in the field of project management in 2016. That I believe is a very impressive feat. So, Sean, welcome to the show. And if you could brief us a bit about your career so far, that would be great.
Well, great, and thanks for the introduction. Yeah, look, as you said, I'm a long-time project management consultant. I aspired for many years to have a truly global career, and I was lucky enough to able to obtain that. And I've worked throughout the world and consulted some pretty big companies. More recently, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've maybe grown older or wiser, I don't know, sought a quieter life rather than the constant travel. That might have also been a coincidence with the pandemic hitting us too. So look, my consultancy career is built on a very diverse practical career as a project manager. I've worked as a project manager in construction and IT and new product development and research and development and organizational change. Makes me a little bit unusual as a project manager. And as a consultant, that's what I do a lot of work in, is helping a lot of different industries to see the best that the others have to offer. Additionally, I work at universities teaching and write books about project management. I basically just describe myself as a project management nerd. I'm in love with the profession, think it's wonderful. So always happy to chat about any aspect of it.
Awesome. That last part is something which is common between both of us. So, Shahan has this article talking about 15 amazing ways that you can use ChatGPT as a project manager. And we'll go over 5 of these that I found the most intriguing. Starting off with the first one, which was idea generation. Sean, so how can project managers generate ideas from ChatGPT? And it also got me thinking, like, what kind of ideas should we be generating anyways?
Yeah, good question. Well, look, I've been a user of ChatGPT since it first came out, and any other AI I leap on pretty quickly. But most of my day is assisted in some way by using ChatGPT, and even today I've used it in probably at least half of the things on that list. So when it comes to idea generation, I just find it amazing. I'll literally just ask a question. It's like, if it's a professional question, it might be, I'm dealing with some risk management issues. Could you brainstorm some things that I may not have thought of, or some different ways to deal with it? Or if it's a particular meeting, I'll literally ask it. There's this great technique called prompt engineering, learning how to ask it the right things. So you can literally ask it for ideas, and you could say, give me 10 ideas, or all of the ideas, or your top 3 ideas. And you can get quite specific with it. And then you can ask it more about particular ideas. And I just love the way most of the time the things I haven't thought of, or if I had thought of them, they might have taken me an hour or two to think of them sort of in slow sequence. And there they are, all in front of me in 20 seconds. So no, I use it. I also use it, outside of work, for hobbies and that, for ideas for hobbies, or other initiatives or business startups. I just find it's one of those things, because of the way it's built as a large language model. It trawls a great database, and it can filter through that lots of ideas. It's absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I love that answer. So, like, if you could give an example as well, like as a project manager or in the field of project management, what was the last 1 or 2 ideas that you generated?
Well, I keep my history, so it's quite extensive. I'm going to log in while I'm chatting to you. So
Sure.
I use the paid version of ChatGPT, which is the GPT-4. today, actually, I've been using it to generate project management cartoons, strangely enough,
Wow.
to go with my blog. So I've been doing that. I also got it to help me. Oh, there's one. I actually got it to help me. Weirdly enough, this morning, I was reading some articles about this concept of survivorship bias. When we look at businesses that succeed, we tend to look at the Amazons and the Microsoft and
Mm-hmm.
go, well, if they do it, we must do it. But it's called survivorship bias. You shouldn't really do that. So I began to think this morning, really early this morning, how could I look at survivorship bias, the theory, the fallacy of the survivorship, when it comes to examining successful projects or successful PMOs or anything like that? So I literally asked it for that. I said, how could I merge these two concepts? And it gave me great ideas.
Wow.
First of all, I just asked it for ideas. I said, could you write me a quick paragraph on how the survivorship bias, which it says is a logical error, and then I said, how could that relate to project management? And it gave me 4 or 5 different ways to look at it.
Awesome.
So that blog will appear in the next week after I've sort of got these ideas and turn them into my way of thinking. So that's a way today. Yesterday, I had to. Well, actually, it wasn't yesterday. It was last Thursday. Somebody asked me to present a quick presentation to their staff on demystifying agile. Just a quick 45-minute presentation on demystifying. I said, yeah, that's no problems at all. So I asked it, could you suggest some taglines after the presentation topic of demystifying agile? And it gave me 10 wonderful taglines, one of which I used. So, I mean, I use it. I use it so much, whether it's cartoons or blog writing. I've also just updated a PMP study book of mine that was out of print because it wasn't updated anymore. It stopped being updated in 2015 and the publisher wasn't interested in updating it. So it had sat there as a dormant manuscript. And I thought I should really update this because I do teach PMP. So I sat down over the last month and worked with ChatGPT. Now that document was already 155,000 words long. It was about 320 pages. That's now 170,000 words, and most of those extra 15,000 words have come from working with ChatGPT to augment and update the content. So I just find it an amazing tool.
Love it, and love how you talked about the book towards the end, because drafting communication was something that I wanted to talk about next. And this is something that I have been doing too, like especially writing to your team members some congratulatory sort of messages where I sometimes feels, it sometimes feels lost for words, right? So I think that plays in the territory of one other point that you had mentioned in the article, and that was about motivation as well. But yeah, how can project managers use ChatGPT for drafting communications?
Yeah, now this is an interesting issue, this one, because you have to be very careful with the more personal a communication should be, the more you should use ChatGPT as inspiration rather than doing the work for you. Because I'll just tell you a funny story. It's a sort of a related story. So I lecture at a university on a Masters of Project Management paper. And earlier this year, back in January, when ChatGPT was very new, I had a class of 30 students. And they all latched on to ChatGPT pretty fast. And there was a small assignment due of only about 1,500 words. And they all submitted it. And I'd sort of said, look, ChatGPT is a new thing. Use it like Wikipedia. Just don't copy and paste. Use it for inspiration. And so I'm marking these 30 assignments. And I spot a really good one. And it's these great 4 paragraphs. And the last paragraph says, and in conclusion. So I start marking again. And then I see another piece of work come through. It's the same sort of 4 paragraphs, and the last paragraph starts with "and in conclusion." I thought, that's unusual. So then out of the 30 students, 10 of them had the same 4 paragraphs, different content, but the last paragraph started with "in conclusion." And I knew straight away that those 10 had put the question into ChatGPT and just given me back the answer. It was so easy to spot. So my point is, for using it for communicating, use it very carefully, because I can spot it now. I'm pretty confident maybe 60, 70% of the time I can spot it when people are using it without making it their own voice. So you could use it with a great question around communication. You may have a particular thing you want to get out. You may have a particular tone that you want to communicate. You may want to tell it the audience. You may want to tell it some of the barriers, cultural or language barriers, and let it draft your first draft. And then don't be afraid to make it iterate as well.
Yeah.
Look at it and go, no, that's not good. Make it more formal, less jargon. Really work it. But even then, when you've really pushed the technology, then you take it, put on one screen what it says, then you write it in your own words on the other screen, because communication has to be effective. And I think all of us as humans are going to get pretty good at just being a little suspicious.
Yeah.
I know for me, I'm watching a lot of LinkedIn blogs being written, and I'm pretty sure 70% of them are being written by ChatGPT, because you can read it and go, no, that doesn't sound human. That doesn't sound like this person. So look, it can be a great tool, motivating and communicating, but because it's your team, make it authentic. Make it you. Use it for inspiration.
Got it. Awesome. Love that answer. So, next point, I would want to talk about something where you mentioned FAQ for teams. And I'm imagining here that we are now trying to integrate Chat GPT with a business itself. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Well, one of the great features of ChatGPT is that you can pay to integrate it as an FAQ through the API system. And that basically what you can do is put ChatGPT into your organization and ring fence the information that it knows and will give out. So it means if somebody asks it a question, it essentially appears as if the chatbot only knows about your organization and only knows about your artifacts or organizational process assets or processes. So that's a great thing. There's many websites doing it. I've probably used 3 or 4 today that are using the ChatGPT chatbot. It is the ChatGPT tool, but it's integrated with the organization, and basically it's told you only know this little bit of knowledge. So you can't use the organization's chatbot to find out about music or news, or you can only find out. There's one website that I use for a hobby I pursue, and they've integrated into the website that I have with them, and all it knows is that hobby. That's it. So you can do this with your team. You can just simply pay for the API integration, and you could simply say, this is what you know. This is the tools you have access to. These are the documents we have. These are the processes that we have. And by the way, you're also going to learn. So as people ask you questions that you don't know, we're going to feed you the answers. If you imagine somebody coming on board to your team, you're onboarding them, you're trying to show them your ways of working, and you normally have to appoint somebody to mentor them, or you have to let them to make their own way through some weird screen on your intranet. If you can have a chatbot there and they can answer all the questions, even prompt them a little bit, it just makes the onboarding process, answering the questions, and even for people who are still on your team, been there for years, if they want to know where is that spreadsheet, or what is the process for change control, or who is the delegated authority, if you've got a chatbot running, it just saves more time.
Awesome. I love that, actually. And it also sort of bring my thoughts to some of the people who say that, we never use ChatGPT, but you might be chatting with some software on some website which is actually ChatGPT. So you might not know, but you are essentially using it. And that is something I believe we are going to see more and more of. So next, I want to talk about task delegation as well. And that was something that really piqued my interest, because as project managers, especially in the non-IT environments, task delegation is something that we take care of and we closely monitor. How exactly can ChatGPT do that?
Yeah, again, it's all to do with the information you feed it. So I have used it for a small team where I explained what each team member did and their capabilities. It was probably about a paragraph I fed it. It was a small team of 6 people. And so I outlined their roles, and then I outlined all the tasks. What I did was I asked it, or I've asked it several times to do this, to not only think of the obvious delegation, but who else could learn from being delegated certain activities as part of their own professional development. And then I also asked it to be mindful of overloading people with too much work and using
Wow.
that as a third filter for delegating work. So I sort of got it to prioritize, delegate first on the basis of who's most obvious to get it. Next, delegate on the basis of who would most benefit from that. And then delegate thirdly on the basis of don't overload anybody with the work that needs to be done. And then delegate so that nobody's overloaded. And it gave me some really good first iterations of, well, this person should do this, but then this person would benefit. We think they're at that. And obviously, I'm the person who knew the team members. So I was able to read that and go, it's a silly chatbot. It didn't quite get that right, but this is good thinking for me. It was an interesting thing, but again, that came down to a lot of the prompts that I put into ChatGPT might be a sentence or two. Those ones have always been at least a paragraph or more to get the best out of it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that I think would be very, very helpful to those who are essentially middle managers, managing
Mm,
people and managing individual contributors, essentially. So, yeah,
yeah.
love that answer. So,
Well, the great thing just on that too, you can keep a conversation thread going in ChatGPT. Like I've got some threads that have been going for a month, and you could start the thread by telling it all about your team, that at any point you can come back to that thread and say, hey, now you need to be aware that this person's changed. So you can keep them going as separate threads and keep going back a week later with new information. So yes, that's the other benefit of that task delegation. You can keep feeding it more information about people.
yeah, that's very powerful. Lastly, something that is pretty interesting is how you mentioned conflict resolution as well.
Mhm.
So, what exactly are we doing here? Are we bringing Chat GPT as a third party, so a neutral party here, or is this something else?
It's something else. In the future, I can imagine 3 or 4 years down the track, whatever that looks like in the future, taking an active role, maybe acting as a
Mm,
mediator or an arbitrator. Because if you imagine contractual resolution where you have to go through negotiation, mediation, arbitration, I can certainly see a time. I don't know when in the future, but artificial intelligence acting in those more informal roles, I can definitely see that. No, I use this one because, like a lot of people, when it comes to conflict, I can sometimes use my very clumsy style, and I don't mind dealing with conflict. But sometimes I have a style which is clumsy and doesn't deal with it, or in a worst case scenario, can actually intensify the conflict. And I recognize that. So what I'll do is I'll use ChatGPT to I'll tell it the scenario, and then I'll ask it for suggestions on ways to word things. This is one of the areas where I often think it gets things too impersonal. It sounds like a robot trying to resolve conflict. So I've used it a few times to give me ideas about how to word things, the approach to take, even the stages to take for doing conflict. And I have used ChatGPT text as part of emails I've sent to people having a conflict.
okay.
So again, it's there. I use it in that instance. Some of the other instances I've given you, I think I could have done the work in maybe an hour or two, and it's done the work for me in 20 or 30 seconds. The
Mm,
conflict resolution is a good example where I just don't think I could do the work myself. And for me, it's a learning opportunity to learn how to word things better with an outcome in mind, how to resolve the conflict, rather than getting involved in the conflict and becoming reactive to it as well. So, and in a way, the fact that it is so impersonal and robotic is quite good, because you can start with it and go, I'm not going to send that because I'm going to appear like a robot, and then you can personalize it. So so it is a good tool for that as well.
Yeah, I see this as aiding your EQ as well, because
Oh yeah,
when you're speaking to Chat GPT, it doesn't really have its own emotional stake in this whole thing that you're talking about, right? So, yeah, I love that answer.
it does, and that's good. It does. It's helped me learn. But I'm also going to share with you an interesting story. Last week, I was catching up with a colleague who works at a different organization and very senior manager at a different organization. And he was a little bit upset because they had a work colleague who had received a really bad medical diagnosis and needed support from the company. And he was very unhappy with the HR department because they had sent this person a very impersonal letter, basically saying, we acknowledge that you're very ill, and that you can use up your leave, etc., and we will support you. And he felt it was disrespectful to the person who'd worked there for 20 years, and it's a very bad diagnosis, by the way. And we sat there last Friday evening, and I said, well, look, just out of interest, let's see what ChatGPT would have done. And I've got the prompt. What did I ask? I said, please write a letter from an employer to an employee that has just received a bad diagnosis, granting them whatever leave they need and offering full support from the company. Please be compassionate. Mm-hmm. He cried when he read this letter. Wow. Because it was the letter that he wished his HR department had written to the person. So sometimes ChatGPT can be better than people. So it's an interesting example. Generally, it sounds robotic, but I've got the letter here in front of me. It's a beautiful letter that ChatGPT wrote that he wishes his HR department had written. So it's not just all impersonal, robotic. I did say the last two words were "be compassionate," and it's done an extremely good job of that letter. Wow. So yeah, it's very good.
Love that. I'd love to close this out with a final question because I think it is a good segue of where we are coming from, and that is, where do you see ChatGPT going? There's one question that comes in very often, and I'm sure you would have heard of it too, is ChatGPT going to replace managers? Is ChatGPT going to replace project managers? Is ChatGPT going to replace all employees? What's your take on that?
If I knew the answer, I'd be a billionaire, to be honest. A year ago, we didn't even know it was coming. AI was something that was in movies. We talked about it. What we knew of AI was clumsy. A year later, simple 12 months down the track, because it's important to acknowledge that this conversation is happening at the end of October 2023 or beginning of November 2023. And that's really important, because the people listening to this conversation in 3 months' time or 6 months are going to have a vastly different reality when it comes to AI. And I just want to recognize that the speed at which AI and everything that's using it is moving, I don't think we can accurately forecast the future. We know it's a great tool. We know it's going to be an incredible help to us. Yes, we've got the usual crowd of people going, oh no, it's taking data, and oh no, it's going to ruin the human experience. But look, the same people said that at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. The same people said that at the beginning of the computer chip revolution. It's a fantastic tool. I have no idea where it's going to go in the future. I am on board, though. Whatever it does, wherever it goes. So today I've used, let me see, what do I use today? ChatGPT. Yes, I've used that. I've used a chatbot. For the first time today, I used the new Zoom feature. I'm not sure if you've got it switched on this call, the AI assistant. Now, I gave a 3.5-hour seminar today using Zoom for some colleagues overseas. And I didn't really know what this AI assistant was going to do. 3 minutes after the 3.5-hour seminar ends, there's a beautiful summary, summary of everything we'd spoken about, the names and everything. The short answer is, we don't know where it's going to go. It's here, it's staying, it's going to get bigger, it's going to get better. I don't know about the word smarter. I'm not prepared to use the word smart at this point. It's a great data crunching tool. All of them are. It can be used for creative purposes. It can be used for professional purposes. So I don't know where it's going. My one bit of advice to anybody, don't ignore it. You will ignore it at your peril. You will be the person whose job does get replaced. Because just like in the Industrial Revolution, when everybody said, well, all this machinery means we won't need craftsmen anymore. Yes, but all those people went off and did other things. When computers came along and people said, well, we won't need all these people working in banking and accounting, other things sprung up. So it's not going to result, in my opinion, a net loss of jobs. It will change jobs. There's no doubt about that. That's about the only forecast I will make of the future. It's going to change the way of working. Look, contact me in a year's time, and I'm sure we'll both be sitting here going, "Oh wow, didn't see that coming." And I'm looking forward to it.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, I think the best advice out of this uh, entire thing is be on board. Do not ignore this, Gen AI tools in general. So, Sean, if someone wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Yeah, look, if anybody wants to chat about my views on ChatGPT, and they are just my views, by the way, because everybody seems to be an expert on LinkedIn at the moment. I am surprised the number of AI experts that you can be an expert in 3 months. I'm not an AI expert, just to be clear. I do not claim to be an AI expert. If anyone does need to contact me to chat about anything to do with this or anything to do with project management, you can just go to crystal.consulting. That's my website. I'm more than happy to chat about any aspects of project management, ChatGPT, or anything at all, and I would love to hear from you.
Awesome. So all the details will be available in the description of this video as well. Thanks for taking the time out today, Sean. And I'm sure our community is going to find this podcast very, very helpful.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm really grateful.